some of the headlines we are featuring today from your favorite news outlets at offthepress.com. On Capitol Hill, House Republicans are looking for a new speaker. That's because Kevin McCarthy dared his enemies to vote him out, and they did. The first time that has happened, we've got the list of 12 potential replacements. The FBI reported that for 50 straight months, gun sales have topped 1 million. But experts see a shift from buyers eager to take advantage of their Second Amendment rights to Americans, especially women and minorities, preparing to protect themselves from surging violence. Arizona Republican Kari Lake has made it official. She filed papers to run for the Senate and challenge Senator Kyrsten Sinema. In an election likely to be dominated by Donald Trump, Lake could win. And Mark Zuckerberg really took seriously his preparation for the canceled boxing match with Elon Musk. We've got the proof in a photo showing the whooping he got during one sparring match. For stories like these and more updates all day long from your favorite news outlets, go to offthepress.com.
America's Voice Live, America's fastest growing news program. With Steve Gruber.
You've got to put America first. You do that by voting and bringing your friends to do the same.
Delivering the latest news, observations, and opinions. With the entire Real America's Voice team, America's Voice Live starts now.
Welcome to America's Voice Live. I'm Steve Gruber. Today is Wednesday, October the 4th. Let's get into the day's top stories, and thank you for being here today. Ketanji Brown states a woman cannot be explained by someone who is not a biologist. Well, that's debatable, and science proves how simply wrong it is. Anyhow, we'll get to that. Matt Barber will join me for that story. Also, a new poll shows the majority of people feel the nation is safer with the Republicans in charge. I guess there's a reason why the GOP is considered the America First Party. And later, we'll have a special guest who was involved with the removal of House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Congressman Andy Biggs will be here. You'll want to stick around for that one, and we'll hear what's going on in his mind after this big vote. We'll tell you about that. So let's start there. For the first time in American history, a sitting speaker removed from his position. 8 Republicans joining all of the Democrats to make Kevin McCarthy the former Speaker of the House. Like I said, it's never been done before, never happened before, but it leaves a huge question mark of what happens next. Because the outstanding question is this. Now that a small group of grassroots Republicans have succeeded in dethroning the Republican Speaker, where do they go from here? And where are we headed as a country? First, let me say a couple of things about that. Number one, the 8 Republicans voting to remove McCarthy were right. We have an unsustainable financial path, and we have a massive debt. It increases all the time. And at some point, it will shadow this nation with a debt crisis if we don't correct it. I've heard my entire life that the people in Congress and in Washington would cut spending and keep things under control, and yet the debt and deficit continue to soar, continue to grow to heights never imagined. They continue to spend money they don't have and borrow to give it away, day after day, year after year. You've seen it, so have I. And honestly, there comes a day when it all comes to an end. When that day comes, I'm not sure. Other complaints were focused on the raging border crisis, huge amounts of money to Ukraine to support the American proxy war with Russia, and the attacks here at home on energy in this country, among other things. For now, North Carolina Congressman Patrick McHenry. He'll step in as the acting Speaker of the House, if you will, until a new person takes the gavel for the rest of the 118th Congress, but nobody seems to know who that is yet. Now, I can say this. Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan, they've thrown their hat in the ring. They might be there. But the question we'll answer first is, how did McHenry get here in the first place? Well, he was on a secret list that was required by House rules for McCarthy to provide for possible successors in the event he could not complete his tenure in the job, which is exactly what happened yesterday. Democrats, in the meantime, are celebrating the ouster of McCarthy, not because they really care one way or the other, but rather they're just cheering because it inflicts damage and embarrassment on the GOP and therefore on this country. And yes, it does both of those things because once again, it looks like the Republicans cannot govern. I mean, we still have Nancy Pelosi's budget. Doesn't look like that's going to change anytime soon. As for Matt Gaetz and his gang of 8 rebels, I'm not sure this will solve the problems they have been outlining, because the clock is running currently on another debt ceiling deadline. I'm not sure we can get to that problem and get it solved in time. And with no speaker right now, seems to make the mountain a bit higher to climb. And it reminds me of a couple sayings. Number one, be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it. And be careful when you trade the devil you know for the devil you don't. Will this be for the better or worse for Republicans, the House, and the country? Well, the truth is, nobody can say for sure not yet, because we simply don't know. But I can tell you this, it is still possible for the underdog to take out Goliath. In this case, the establishment political class. And they can do it with a small group of determined people. I also have a warning for the Democrats who are celebrating. Don't celebrate too much. You may end up with a hangover. Right now, people are so disenchanted with Joe Biden, the whole Bidenomics scam, they're willing to vote for a tree stump with an R next to it to root out the socialists in our government. Keep that in mind. And right now, the leading candidate for president continues to be the former president, Donald Trump, despite all of his troubles, mostly manufactured. And here's something that you should be clear on when it comes to the former president. He's been fairly consistent supporting Kevin McCarthy. He did support him in 2022 after the midterms in his quest for speaker. He supported him in January. And, well, yesterday he posted on Truth, if you missed it, and I quote, "Why is it that Republicans are always fighting among themselves? Why aren't they fighting the radical left Democrats who are destroying our country?" President Trump also said this earlier today about the matter, and it could possibly be speaker. Listen to this.
A lot of people have been calling me about speaker. All I can say is we'll do whatever is best for the country and for the Republican Party.
Would you take the job?
Great people.
Would you take the job?
We have some great people.
Would you take the job?
A lot of people have asked me about it. I'm focused. You know, we're leading. I don't know you. I'm sure you don't read too much in the papers. But we're leading by like 50 points for president. You know, my focus is totally on that. If I can help them during the process, I would do it. But we have some great people in the Republican Party that could do a great job as speaker.
Well, that would certainly make things even more interesting if it's even possible, wouldn't it? Anyway, back to our story of the creatures in the deep, dark swamp and the very public fight they just had. It's time to reflect on some of the things that were said and done and heard yesterday on the House floor on a very historic day. Before the vote, the conversation was heated, to say the least. Here's Matt Gaetz taking on the privileged elite. Listen.
I take no lecture on asking patriotic Americans to weigh in and contribute to this fight from those who would grovel and bend knee for the lobbyists and special interests who own our leadership, who have, boo all you want, who have hollowed out this town and have borrowed against the future of our future generations.
You know, and of course, Gaetz, he's not wrong on that. It's something we talk about almost daily on this program. Washington is too entrenched with special interest and all the money that comes with it. Doesn't take a genius to figure out why so many in Washington become so wealthy on the salary of a public servant. Gaetz also attacked the notion that removing McCarthy would plunge the House into chaos. He strongly disagreed. Here's what he said.
I don't think voting against Kevin McCarthy is chaos. I think $33 trillion in debt is chaos. I think that facing a $2.2 trillion annual deficit is chaos. I think that not passing single subject spending bills is chaos. I think the fact that we have been governed in this country since the mid-90s by continuing resolution and omnibus is chaos. And the way to liberate ourselves from that is a series of reforms to this body that I would hope would outlast Speaker McCarthy's time here, would outlast my time here, and would outlast either of our majorities. Reforms that I have heard some of the most conservative members of this body fight for, and some of the reforms that we've been battling for that I've even heard those in the Democrat caucus say would be worthy and helpful to the House.
Now, yet to say if that's exactly true, and hopefully Republicans can all get on the same page and soon about who to vote for Speaker. Like I said, Steve Scalise, Jim Jordan in the race currently. But whether this was the right move or not, one thing Republicans should be able to get and understand is fiscal sanity. We need to get behind that. That's what Gaetz said this was all about on the House floor yesterday. He was consistent about that point. Here he is.
like understanding what the budget is. We have been out of compliance with budget laws for most of my life, most of many of your lives. And by the way, if we did those things, if we had single subject bills, if we had an understanding on the top line, if we had open amendments, if we had trust and honesty and understanding, there would be times when my conservative colleagues and I would lose, might be a few times when we'd win. There'd be times that we would form partnerships that might otherwise not be really predictable in the American body politic, but the American people would see us legislating. These last few days, we've suspended the momentum that we had established the week earlier, where we were bringing bills to the floor, voting on them, staying late at night, working hard. That's what the American people expect. It's something Speaker McCarthy hasn't delivered, and that's why I've moved to vacate the chair.
Yeah, but there were 210 Republicans that stood together and voted for Kevin McCarthy to remain as Speaker. Many believe this was a big mistake, including former Congressman Jason Chaffetz, who was watching from the sidelines and said this.
I don't understand the end game. There was an offer on the table to cut the discretionary portion of the budget and add border security. And when the few people said no, even that's not good enough, I thought that was wrong. I thought that was the wrong vote for them. Keep in mind, I'm very sympathetic to the idea that they did not go through regular order as Kevin McCarthy had promised with the appropriations bills. Yeah. But there is no end game in mind. They have no replacement. They have nobody that they can point to who can garner that many votes. And I just think you ceding control and the microphone and everything else over to the Democrats.
He was not alone. Current Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massey said McCarthy himself was not the problem. Here's what he believes is the problem. Listen.
Mr. Speaker, as the only still serving co-author and co-sponsor of the motion to vacate Speaker Boehner, I can tell you this motion to vacate is a terrible idea. As the only member who's serving here who took every chance to vote against Speaker Boehner and to vote against Speaker Ryan, I can tell you that this chamber has been run better, more conservatively, and more transparently under Mr. McCarthy than any other speaker that I have served under. As a member of the Rules Committee, one of three conservatives who were placed there out of trust, the Speaker gave us a blocking position by putting three of us on there to keep an eye on the Rules Committee, to make sure the process was fair and even. I can tell you it's been fair and even. None of us are voting against the Speaker today.
Obviously, Massey failed to convince enough of his colleagues not to vote to oust the now former Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, a title usually for somebody when they retire. So what happens now? Well, as I said before, the House needs to vote on a new speaker, and another deadline looms for a government shutdown, something the media and Democrats will, of course, be gleefully talking about to the American people, telling you Republicans are, in chaos, and at the moment they seem to be. Even though polls taken before this stunt say most Americans would have been blaming the Democrats for a shutdown. Congressman Andy Biggs will join me later on the program, one of the 8 who voted to vacate the chair. We'll get some answers from him on where we go from here, so stay with us for that. This conversation continues. But again, Steve Scalise, Jim Jordan, their hats are in the ring. Who would you like in that position? Who would you like? I'd like to hear from you. We'll talk about it. Now, coming up after the break, everyone is either born with 2 X chromosomes or an X and a Y chromosome. Scientific fact, it's a certainty. No amount of surgery, treatment, medication, or pretending can change that fact. Let's get back to the simple facts. Matt Barber will be with me next here with some reasons why we need to get back to the basics. Straight ahead on AVL. Well, some stark moments have marked the gender confusion debate that's been raging in the U.S. More intensely, it seems, in the last couple of years, but few were as stunning as the response of Ketanji Brown Jackson after she was asked for her definition of the word woman during her confirmation hearings. The now sitting Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court said she didn't know because she's not a biologist. How did something that is an objective reality confirmed by science and just plain common sense become controversial or indefinable? How did an educated woman in the United States of America come to this conclusion? One thing's for certain, we can no longer allow this agenda to be advanced by the highest leaders of the land or to permeate and pervert our culture without going unchecked and unchallenged. With me now to discuss this is an attorney and former law professor, Matt Barber. Matt, good to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
All right, so we might want to listen to Matt. He was also an undefeated heavyweight professional boxer before retiring in 2004. So, you know, if you get an argument, he might just smack you around. I'm just kidding, Matt, of course. But here's one of the things. One of the things that is paraded around, and I'll use your career as a foundation for this. You can say, well, I identify as a woman now, and I want to go box in the ring as a trans female boxer. And some people would let you, and you would do real damage. You'd be a real threat to people, even though you haven't boxed in 20 years. Doesn't matter. You look like a formidable individual, and that's a dangerous precedent to set. Why do we allow this lunacy to persist?
Well, fortunately, it hasn't made the boxing ring yet. We see it in other highly competitive sports, in track and field, in powerlifting and gymnastics. Also, sadly, we are now starting to see it make its way into, and by it, I mean this transanity. That's what I call it. It is absolutely insane. There's a MMA fighter, last name Fox, for instance, a dude who decided, you know, as the story goes, you know, these swimmers and so forth, when they can't cut it, competing against men, these misogynists step in and decide to compete against women. Well, this Fox fella, he has bludgeoned a number of women in the MMA octagon on a number of occasions, one to the point that he crushed her orbital lobe, beat her so bad she had to be hospitalized. So we do see it making this transgender nonsense making its way into the combat sports, which that's where people can seriously get injured. It's unfair when we're looking at swimmers and gymnasts and track and field and power lifters, but when you start getting into the combat sports, it's no longer something that we can just be flippant and kind of joke about.
No, we can't. And I saw one of those MMA events. I'm not sure it's the same person you're referring to. But I saw a woman get seriously injured, had to be taken out, knocked flat cold. And look, I get that happens in boxing sometimes. But you raise the risk of injury when you have contact sports involving men and women. Now, look, when you're talking about, you know, middle school football and you see girls on the team here and there, there's even a college football player right now that's a woman. And I'm fine with that. But they have to understand the risks. And forcing this on people is absolutely wrong. But beyond that, this whole idea of not telling parents when their child wants to be Susie instead of Sam or whatever it is, we're going to keep it secret. This is a political agenda. And when you watch the fact that it goes from 1 in 30,000 people that express gender dysphoria to 1 in 30, well, then something's gone terribly wrong. And the advertising campaign brought to you in part by the Chinese Communist Party and TikTok, I think we should take a closer look at that, don't you?
Absolutely. And make no mistake, this whole idea of transgender, it's a social fiction. It's a social construct intended, frankly, to attack the very bifurcation and unique nature of male and female. It's an attack on God, frankly. And, you know, in Matthew 19, it's repeated, you know, in the beginning, God made them male and female. Well, this is the materialist leftist worldview that says, no, we get to define who we are. We get to say, what is male, what is female. I am objectively a male, but I can say that I'm a 6 foot black female lesbian NBA star if I want to. And under this, what I call, the Emperor's New Clothes meets George Orwell, we not only.
Well, just for the record, That's exactly what I thought of when I first saw you. Just, okay, so carry on. I mean, that's exactly what I thought when I looked at you,
Yeah.
Black lesbian NBA star.
Yeah, exactly. Well, again, the Emperor's New Clothes meets George Orwell. So we all have to pretend that a man who claims to be a woman is somehow a woman, despite the Adam's apple, the 5 o'clock shadow, and calves the size of Arnold Schwarzenegger. We have to pretend that this dude in a miniskirt is a woman under penalty of law. And certainly all of the social media platforms, you'll get banned from Facebook. You'll get banned from Twitter if you simply state objective scientific reality. I've been banned from Twitter simply for saying that a man is a man, woman is a woman. It's defined by their chromosomes, period.
Yeah. For telling the truth. Well, Matt, I implore you to keep telling the truth, and thank you for being here and sharing this conversation. We'll have more of these in the future because, unfortunately, some folks want to continue to push this narrative no matter how far-fetched it is. Matt Barber, thank you, sir.
My pleasure. Anytime, Steve. Thank you.
There you have it. I wouldn't want him on the other side of me, let alone a woman. All right, coming up after the break, Andy Biggs going to join me. He gave comments on the floor of the House yesterday, voted to remove Kevin McCarthy, a successful vote that he had. He'll tell us why straight ahead. Well, as you full well know, the Speaker's gavel back up for grabs today after the House dumped Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. First time in American history, a historic vote to say the least. House members voted 216 to 210, with Representatives Andy Biggs, Ken Buck, Tim Burkett, Eli Crane, Matt Gaetz, Bob Good, Nancy Mace, and Matt Rosendale joining all Democrats voting to take the gavel away and ousting him. McCarthy has stated he will not run again for Speaker, an election set for October the 11th, 1 week hence. Congressman Troy Nehls says he'll nominate former President Donald Trump to the position, and Congressman Jim Jordan says he plans on running, and so does Steve Scalise. They're both in the race now. Here to discuss all of it, Congressman Andy Biggs, who was one of the 8 who voted to oust the Speaker of the House yesterday. Andy, thank you for being here.
Steve, good to be with you.
All right, let's do the background here because you've got 210 people that are not pleased. So let's talk about the people that are pleased. A lot of people in this country are pleased that you moved and were involved with this. What is the genesis here? What was the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will? How did we get here? What did it take from Kevin McCarthy to irritate you to a point to say, look, we're going to vote to remove you?
So it began with me when we saw the debt ceiling play that he made. And I won't get into all the details, but he said he was going over there. He told us, and I said yesterday in my speech, he laid it on the table that he was going to start at $1.5 trillion increase in national debt over 8 months. And he walked back a few days later with exactly what Joe Biden had asked for, which was no debt ceiling until January 25, because Joe Biden did not want it to be an issue in the presidential campaign. So we just gave away a political advantage, and we also gave away a policy advantage. So that was just like, I didn't know how to take that at that point. And you throw it in the context of the border and this notion where they kept saying, oh, we're going to do H.R. 2 or some version of it in a continuing resolution. Well, the problem with it is when you do a continuing resolution, you lose the advantage of the 12 spending bills that he promised he would do by a statute, which we're supposed to do. And when you lose that, that means you can't leverage against the administration. And that means that we can't enforce H.R. 2 even if it were to pass because the Biden administration is lawless. So all of those indicate to me that there was a super duper problem here, and it wasn't getting better. It was actually going the other way. And so you couple those two things together with another, just a failure to get things done with regard to, he didn't release the J6 hours of tape that he said he would. He didn't bring either the term limit or the budget control bills to the floor. There's just a whole series of things that we are killing ourselves on, and the reality is we have not accomplished virtually anything. And so,
well, there's a lot of show votes out there. I'll tell you that. That's the thing I never understood. There's a lot of posturing and puffing up of chest, but votes that actually matter on things rarely seem to happen in Congress. So I guess my question is, where do we go from here? Because as you look at him being removed, there are several people that could be up for the job. Steve Scalise, Jim Jordan, their names are in the ring right now. If it were those two being considered, could you support either one of those folks?
Well, Steve, I have to confess I am now a pariah in the conference, as you might guess. And so if I say I'm going to support somebody, there will be 150 people who immediately say they will support anybody but that person because that's who Biggs wants. So I've chosen not to handicap anybody, but I can tell you what I do want. I want the most conservative person who can get 218 votes. And that's what I want. And if we can get that person, I think we can actually salvage this term and actually get some meaningful things done.
All right, so let me tell you what the critics are saying, and this will be no news to you, I understand, but critics say these 8 people burned down the House. These 8 people who complain about voting with Democrats voted with all the Democrats, who, by the way, are very clever. The Democrats are celebrating all of this, of course, because it creates all this confusion and chaos, and it hurts the Republicans and it hurts the country. But what do you say to people that say, hey, you voted with all the Democrats, you burned down the House, this was not the thing to do? Because that's what they're saying, the critics, 210 of them, plus however many more. How do you respond?
Well, first of all, I'd say this wasn't done chaotically. We used the bills. This was done regular order. We used the rules, not the bills. We used the rules, and we did everything by the book, by the rules, that were passed unanimously, by the way, by every one of those Republicans that are complaining now. The rules were there. We used them appropriately. That's first thing. Second thing, is it chaotic? No, that wasn't chaotic because we followed the rules. Second, the other aspect of it is committees, hearings, depositions, all those can continue to go on, which is why I don't know why they released everybody for a week last night. They should have kept going with committees. They've got 2 bills for appropriations that still haven't even been voted out of committee yet. And so they should have gone to put pedal to the metal and had the Approps Committee get together and push those out. The third thing I would say is, what's chaotic is when you continue to do things like pass massive monolithic budget spending bills, just singles bills, not where we all get to go after them, that actually facilitate the imposition of Biden policies. And
I actually, if I may, Andy, I would extend that further, not just to spending bills. I think bills in general should be single subject bills, because what happens is you get these giant bills that are thousands of pages long that nobody ever reads. And like Nancy Pelosi says infamously, well, you have to pass it to find out what's in it. No, that's not how to run the railroad. And so I'm going to agree with you on that, but I think it should extend beyond just spending bills to all bills so we have an idea, or at least make the bills lower. The entire New Deal in 1933 was 22 pages. Think about that. And here we are, doing thousands of pages on minuscule things when everybody packs stuff in there and everybody's looking to take some piece of candy home for their district. It's outrageous to me. It's outrageous to the American people. We're $33 trillion in debt. And so, therefore, I agree with you on the point of we need to get our fiscal house in order. But are we going to get there? We're on the clock again, we as a nation, for another debt ceiling challenge coming in November. What is it, November 17th, whatever it is. How is this going to slow things down? Apparently there'll be a vote 1 week from today. You're going to keep your vote to yourself, so therefore you don't create any sort of confusion or chaos around an upcoming candidate. But can we get there? Can we get a better bill? Can we reduce spending? Can we get security at the southern border? Can the Republicans have some leverage here in the aftermath of what happened yesterday?
Well, I think so. Last week we did 4 bills on the House floor in 72 hours, where you had literally hundreds and hundreds of amendments offered, debated, voted on. So the answer is yes, we can do it when we want to do it, but it takes leadership. We did it. For those people that voted yesterday to remove the speaker, we're the ones that drove that last week. If we hadn't taken the action that we did the week before that, we never would have been able to do those 4 individual spending bills. And you know what? One of those bills went down because the moderates voted it down. And that's fine. That's their prerogative. That's the way the system works. And nobody got mad at them for killing a bill that was supported and sponsored and promoted by the vast majority of Republicans. Nobody went after those guys. But they always go after the conservatives, and I don't have a chip on my shoulder about that. I just pointed out to say,
well, here's something, Andy, I want to clear up. I do want to clear this up, because I watch social media a lot and I see all the back and forth, and I've only got about a minute left here, but I want to get to this. 210 people voted to keep Kevin McCarthy. You know that, of course. They're not all rhinos. I mean, Chip Roy and Ralph Norman, these are not rhinos. These are not, these are conservative people that voted. You people have a difference of opinion. I think I've got to go back to the Ronald Reagan idea of you can't sit there and attack fellow Republicans all day long. Even you as a pariah, your own words, not mine, in the caucus right now. There has to be some cohesiveness so that the Republicans can march together as a cohesive unit, because that's what the Democrats always do. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with it. That's why I say I'm okay with people voting stuff down. What I'm not okay with is not getting an opportunity to actually participate as a representative of your constituents to vote on single subject bills, as you said. And when you do that, actually what happens is you actually build opportunities and pathways to more negotiation. Why? Because people have more ability to have buy-in, and they have more ability to see what's actually going on, so they can participate with eyes open and make decisions that they think is best for their constituents. And so I think in the end we're going to be better off for this. Short term, whenever you exit a suboptimal path, short term the cost can feel extremely high. But when you move to a more optimal path, then then people say, yes, this feels better. And I think that's what's going to happen here, Steve. That's what I really believe.
All right, Congressman Andy Biggs. Look, if you're a little short on invitations this season, you can come to my Christmas party, all right? It's going to work out. I mean, we have to go forward from here. All right, sir. Thank you very much for being here. There you go. Andy Biggs. I mean, he says he's a pariah. I believe that's true. He's probably not getting a lot of invites to the after-office party today. Anyhow, coming up after the break, High Point University in North Carolina got caught trying to force student organizations to fill a chair of diversity, equity, and inclusion. My friend Emily Sturge joining me next with that story. Don't go anywhere. Well, according to Turning Point USA, the Student Government Association at High Point University in North Carolina attempted to force student organizations to, quote, fill out a chair of diversity, equity, and inclusion in order for them to maintain official standing on campus. Student Government Association bylaws were amended in February of this year and posted to a university webpage despite lacking approval from the High Point administration. Student organizations were then informed they would need to conform to the new rule by filling the new position, including DEI chair. Here with details is Emily Sturge from Campus Reform. Emily, nice to see you again.
Awesome to see you, Steve.
So are we talking about the chess club, the intramural basketball team? Well, what are we talking about here? That everybody has to have a DEI, designated individual. What are they referring to?
Steve, we're talking about all groups on campus. That includes conservative groups, that includes leftist groups. And what's happening here is High Point University student government is silencing any student organizations who do not adopt these leftist policies. And let me be clear, this is a clear violation of students' First Amendment rights. These are rights that don't just stop once a student walks onto their campus. All students, liberal, conservative, all students have the right to gather and speak their minds on their campus, not just leftist student groups. Speech restrictions like this specifically are targeting conservative student groups, making it much more difficult for conservative students like myself to express themselves on college campuses and exposing them to unequal treatment.
So if you're part of the campus chess club or whatever you're a party to, if you don't have the DEI position filled, you're just automatically disbanded? Is that what I'm hearing, that you're just out?
Well, what you're hearing is, yes, students are being silenced if they don't abide by these leftist policies and really take part in these DEI principles. But conservative groups on college campuses, we're used to this. We're used to facing unequal treatment from university administrations and student government. And this story is unfortunately just another example. For example, Wayne State University, they only recognized a Christian student group on their campus after the students had to actually sue and won their case in federal court. And conservative groups on campuses also receive much less funding and have a much harder time finding faculty advisors. We've reported that at the Leadership Institute's campus reform, and specifically at my university, the University of Florida student government gave a socialist student club 15 times more funding than a conservative group. That shows which values student government and which values the campus administration, which values they support. They're supporting the leftist students, and that's completely unfair.
Yeah, I would say this is ridiculous. But it's a pattern. It's a symptom of things that are going on all over this country all the time, Emily, and it needs to stop. And hopefully the folks at High Point will get the message. I'll give you the last word.
Well, students deserve to have their First Amendment rights protected by their universities because free speech is imperative to a free society, and it's imperative on college campuses. What students learn on college campuses, they're going to bring to society one day. They're going to bring that to the workforce, and they're going to bring that to the voting booth. So it's extremely important for students to be able to have these constitutional rights on campus and for university administrations to stand up for these rights of students.
There you go. Emily, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Steve. Good to see you.
We'll talk soon. And we'll get back to the news after this quick break and a message from our sponsor, Birch Gold. Last month, the G20 announced a plan to impose digital currencies and digital IDs on their respective populations. Central bank digital currencies essentially allow the government to track everything you do with your money, everything. They can even allow officials to prohibit you from buying things that they don't want you to buy, or freeze or even seize part or, yes, all of your money. In essence, they enable the government to take more control over your finances. Concerned Americans are diversifying their assets into physical gold with the help of Birch Gold. If you want a physical asset held in a tax-sheltered retirement account, you should call Birch Gold right now. And learn for yourself. Text America to 989898, and they will send you a free information kit on gold. The easiest way to become a Birch Gold customer? Well, if you have an IRA or 401k from a previous employer just gathering dust, Birch Gold can help you convert that into an IRA in gold, and you don't pay a penny out of pocket. Text America to 989898 right now. Claim your free information kit on gold, and then call them, because if digital currency becomes a reality, it would be nice to have some real gold fall back on. All right. Still to come today, 53% of Americans believe the Republican Party will do a better job at keeping the country prosperous, which shouldn't be that hard with Bidenomics in effect. That story straight ahead on ABL. Well, the D.C. machine might be broken, but at the end of the day, most Americans still want the GOP in charge of, well, pretty much everything. According to a new series of Gallup polling, 53% of Americans believe the Republican Party would do a better job of keeping the country prosperous, as opposed to only 39% who believe the same about Democrats. 57% trust the GOP to protect our nation from international terrorism and military threats, while 35% think the Democrats could do a better job. It's almost like Americans are starting to believe Democrats are truly the America Last Party, who care more about political correctness and themselves than reality or national security. The 14-point percentage lead the Republicans hold on major issues is up 4 points. 4 points it's up from last year, where it sat at 10. It is the widest advantage the Republicans have held since 1991. So, again, Democrats, while you're celebrating this whole change in the speakership, I wouldn't celebrate too long or too loud, just saying. The Capitol Police have issued a statement on its ongoing investigation on the fire alarm that was pulled in a congressional office building ahead of the spending vote over the weekend. The statement details the events that occurred as, quote, a man was seen trying to exit the door in the Cannon building and then pulling the fire alarm that prompted the evacuation. USCP officers had previously placed signs with clear language that explained the door was secured and marked as an emergency exit only. You see what's missing? The name of the member of Congress that pulled a fire alarm, a former high school principal, Congressman Jamel Bowman, Democrat. He can be seen in the video. He's admitted to the crime and dominated headlines all weekend, so why won't the Capitol Police name him? Yeah, you'll figure it out. A police report in the interview that the police held with Bowman still hasn't been released, but I'm sure that'll be more interesting. Of course, that is if we ever see it. The Supreme Court will not be taking up a case this new term that seeks to disqualify former President Donald Trump from the 2024 ballots of the various states. Write-in Republican candidate John Anthony Castro sued Trump earlier this year, claiming that the post-Civil War provision in the 14th Amendment barred the former president from running, quote, given his alleged provision of aid or comfort to the convicted criminals and insurrectionists that violently attacked our United States Capitol. The case has been denied without any comment or recorded vote. Similar lawsuits have been filed in Colorado, New Hampshire, Michigan, and Arizona, all headed exactly nowhere. An Iranian official is claiming Iranian responsibility for multiple terrorist attacks of the 1980s that cost hundreds of American lives. The Middle East Media Research Initiative obtained an audio recording of an interview with the Islamic Republic of Iran's representative to Lebanon, Syed Tabatabai. It's unclear when the interview was taken, but Tabatabai tells the Islamic Republic News Agency that he, quote, provided what was needed in order to carry out martyrdom operations in the place where the Americans and Israelis were, Lebanon. Tabatabai went on to claim that they partnered with the terrorist movement Hezbollah in keeping up military operations. It cost hundreds of lives. Hezbollah has been blamed for bombing the U.S. Embassy in Beirut in 1983. 63 people died there, and for enlisting suicide truck bombers that same year in an attack that killed 220 U.S. Marines, 18 Navy sailors, and 3 Army soldiers, along with 58 French troops at the barracks in Lebanon. Tabatabai says he received the orders from Ayatollah Khomeini, the father of the Islamic Revolution. This is significant because no official representative of the Khomeini or of Iran's supreme leader has ever acknowledged that they had any involvement in the bombings, but we know now. What will we do about it? It's time for the White House to demand reparations or take some bolder step, but I wouldn't hold your breath, all right? There is an organization that still backs Obamacare, gun control, extreme transgender policies that endanger our kids, and they claim to be bipartisan, but last year that organization, well, it gave 95% of its donations to Democrats. That's AARP. AARP doesn't represent the values of American seniors. Fortunately, there is a conservative alternative, AMAC. The Association of Mature American Citizens proudly champions Americans' rights to free speech, religious liberty, and the Second Amendment. AMAC defends parents' rights to protect their kids and is fighting to restore America's election integrity. With more than 2 million members nationwide, AMAC is growing. They're pro-faith, pro-family, and of course, pro-freedom. I'm a proud member of AMAC, and I encourage you to join today. Let's send AARP a strong message that they don't represent conservative seniors. Join AMAC to, am I a senior? Oh, that hurts. Join AMAC today at amac.us/voice. That's amac.us/voice. All right. Thank you for being here. I'm a senior. After the break, we'll have a story that reminds us of how wonderful America is, plus your answers to the America's Voice question of the day. You know, I always like to leave this program with you feeling good about things. We talk about a lot of serious things. You might feel good already after the political upheaval yesterday. It might fit in with what you wanted. But here's something that makes you remember how wonderful America is. Two young men showed class and outstanding character and sportsmanship at a high school track meet in Wisconsin. Cooper Erickson and Ethan Olds were racing when their competition fell right before reaching the end of the race. Their competitor fell. The two of them immediately turned around, picked up their comrade, helped carry him across the finish line. Oh, it was remarkable. Listen. Cross country. I wouldn't do it, but I'm glad you would. They allowed that young man to place how he would have fallen had he not fallen, and the boys showed considerate sportsmanship to one another. Really like that, by the way. Check this out.
I know our team has great respect for people that give their best efforts, and that's what he did. He just came up 10 feet short, so I think we both just kind of felt like he deserved to finish that one.
He did deserve to finish. All that practice, all that hard work. I've watched people run cross country. Ouch. You're better human beings than I am. That's what makes America wonderful. Courage, selflessness demonstrated by those young men. Raise one another up at critical times and share victories together. All right, so how about that question of the day? How do you feel about Kevin McCarthy being dumped, ousted, yanked from the speaker's chair. Dale Malusi says 15 ballots to get elected. He didn't have the support from the start. Bye-bye. Richard Finn, love it. Remember the fight in January for him to get the job? He lied to get it. He stole all leverage to get anything done or stopped, giving the rhino cowards cover to pass along Joe Biden's spending and Ukraine World War III spending push. Those going after Gates and the other 7 have unmasked their true rhino horn and are true enemies, same as the left. I think that's a bit overbroad, but it's what he said. Patricia Fife Beauregard, I'm not happy about it at all. But I'm not happy with any of them except Senator Kennedy of Louisiana. He should be in charge of everyone. He says it like it is. Love him. All right, it's Kennedy in charge of everybody. That Kennedy, not the other one. Tim Schaefer, Kevin McCarthy is a whip that speaks with a forked tongue and needed to be fired. He's still there. Remember, now you got to get his vote to get stuff done. Larry Van Vliet didn't do the job, so he had to go. And Gabby McCauley writes this, McUseless had it coming. Rhino. All right, we're going to leave it there for today. Another big day, of course. Is there ever a dull moment around here? The answer is no, there's not. All right, so there it is. Let's see here. Don't forget to go to stevegruber.com. Drop me a note. Tell me what you're thinking. How's it going in your neck of the woods? What do you like? What do you not like? And if you don't like me, you can write that too. I can take it. I'm okay with it. I've been doing this a long time. stevegruber.com. Check that out. Don't forget to start your day tomorrow right here with the Steve Gruber Show, starting at 6 a.m. right here on Real America's Voice. And then I'll meet you right back here tomorrow afternoon for America's Voice Live.